Okay, recording has started. And just a reminder for those coming in, please put your name and agency in the chat because sometimes the attendance will only show me your name or your email. And you can go ahead and download and print if you want to follow along. The grant management guide, the PDF is in the chat, and then also the slides from today's presentation are available in the chat. The grant management guide is also available on rideuta.com/CMM for coordinated mobility management. And then you click on the 5310 page and resources, and that's where all our resources are and where you can find the grant management guide. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen and make sure I have audio working. Okay, so I'm going to try to go through this training quickly so I don't keep you all day. We will take a little break at the hour mark and then come back hopefully for another hour, maybe an hour and a half, but I'm going to try to move through it quickly. So if it's too fast for you, you have the grant management guide. That's going to be much more detailed. This is kind of an overview of what is in your grant management guide. Your grant management guide is your Bible for this program. It has a lot of your expectations. And then when you get your grant agreement, that will also have a lot of expectations of your agency. And then just so you know, the program management plan has our expectations. So that is what the FTA holds UTA to. It has our policies for how we will run the program. And then the grant management guide is the policies for how we will oversee and how you must run your programs, if that makes sense. Okay. So congratulations, you guys are here. You did your pre-application and then you came to the application workshop and then you submitted your application with a lot of documents and work and you got your award letter. And now you're ready to start your project and get your grant agreement going. So there's the unfortunate business of the fact that federal money comes with strings. And here I have listed all of the important documents that oversee or explain the oversight of this program. The C and CFR abbreviations mean circular, and that is the federal policy that governs all the grant programs. So 2 CFR 200, we refer to as the uniform guidance. You might hear that term, or the super circular. That is the, where's my mouse? Sorry. 2 CFR 200 is a section of the uniform guidance that covers all federal grants and all federal grant awards. It is like the giant master book of all federal rules and regulations. And so it is the broad one. Then it comes down to the FTA Circular 9071G. That one is specific to the 5310 grant program. And if you see a rule in the Circular 9070.1G that seems to conflict with something in the uniform guidance, the 9071G will override the rule in the uniform guidance because it is more program specific. You can find these documents online. You can just Google them. There's different resource websites that make them easier to navigate. And I have links to those if you need. And then the Circular 5010-1E covers award management and things that happen post-award or after the grant, such as like disposal of assets, things like that, asset management. It's more specific to federal assets. And then, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I took some Sudafed, but I might have to stop to blow my nose occasionally. Sorry about that. We have the UTA Grant Management Guide, which I already discussed with you. It is the guide for you to manage this program, and you can download it from the website or in the chat. And then the program management plan is something that UTA develops that FTA reviews and approves. It is our plan for how we will manage this program, but it is good to know. So you can review that also. It's on the website and it's publicly available. And it's just saying this is how UTA will run the program. But it's not really written for subrecipients, if that makes sense. It's more written for the FTA to read and understand and hold us to our own policies on how we will manage subrecipients. Okay, so those are like the main documents that you need to know about. Moving on, we are called a pass-through entity. That means that UTA gets the money and we pass it through to subrecipients. So UTA is the designated recipient. And we were designated by the governor of Utah, I want to say it was in 2015, to be the pass-through entity for these funds. It is our job to guide subrecipient compliance and understanding and help you translate the guides and circulars into rules that you can understand. It is our job to ensure compliance of those rules and UTA's rules. A lot of times the uniform guidance will refer to us and allow us to develop the rule, and that should be in our program management plan if we are deciding how we're going to oversee certain things. So for an example, they will tell us you must have a risk assessment. They don't care how that's done, but we must have a risk assessment to review risk of subrecipients. So that is one of the examples of how UTA has some guidance, but it's up to us to decide how we're going to do that. And we have to have written policies and procedures for how that will be done. It is also our job to keep up with changes to the uniform guidance and keep up with best practices of the 5310 program. I try to attend the National Grant Management Association conference along with the Grants Professional Association conference. I try to alternate them year to year because they offer different information so that I can keep up to date on how other 5310 managers throughout the country are running their programs and what new changes are coming down the pipeline as far as federal grants go. The FTA also audits UTA every 3 years, and I will talk more about that. They look at how we run the program and your compliance because it's also our job to oversee that you are complying with the rules and for us to help you understand what those rules are. That's why we require quarterly reports, site visits, risk assessments, and vehicle inspections, and we will go over all of that and what is required of that. And then just so you know, as the federal government releases more and more money into our communities as they grow, that comes with more oversight and more rules and more work for us. So the funds will continue to get more competitive as time goes, and the program will grow bigger and bigger. And so will our team that manages it because it just has to keep up. Okay, the objectives of this training are to understand responsibilities and processes, understand the 5310 expectations, where to find them, what your reporting requirements are, what a risk assessment is, what a vehicle inspection is, what a site visit is, understanding briefly, I won't go too into it because it takes a lot of time, but briefly the civil rights requirements. If you have questions about those plans, you've never developed one, you're new to this, you could definitely reach out to me. I have great templates and great guides from the National RTAP Association to help you with that. Understanding the process of requesting funds for reimbursement if you have operating assistant, preventive maintenance, mobility management program, and I'll talk about what mobility management means. And then we are going to cover vehicle management requirements in this training. We used to do a separate training, but it's gotten kind of hard to predict when vehicles are coming. So I might just do a lunch and learn refresher down the road on vehicle management, but we're going to cover it briefly in this training. Okay, so it's a lot to cover. So I'm going to try to go fast and get through it so that we're not here all day because I know you guys have jobs to do. We're going to go over Zoomgrants briefly. Zoomgrants does have training guides on their website, and we pay for you to have access to their customer service. So if you ever have glitches or issues with Zoomgrants, they have a Zoomgrants University where you can look up guidebooks and steps, or you can reach out to their customer service. They're pretty responsive. I think it's great. I like Zoomgrants better than we used to have a program called Amplifund, and Zoomgrants has been working much better for us. But you've always used Zoomgrants because you had to use it for application. So we're not going to talk about the application side, but mostly the management side. We're going to go over reporting requirements and how to submit your quarterly report, how to submit a Zoomgrants invoice, and I recorded videos of how to do that. And my nose is very stuffy in the video, so I'm sorry about that. We'll go over site visits and inspections, risk assessments, audits, and then, like I said, civil rights. We'll briefly go over your budget and Zoomgrants too. I don't talk about that too much because I think we did a lot of that in the application training, and we have a lunch and learn now on budgeting. We will go over a vehicle procurement process and how that's changed. It's always changing every year. So I will update you on our new processes, and then our policies and procedures, and then other important things like coming to the local coordinating council meeting and resources. Also, if you have any issues, questions, me or Glenda Clausen, our new compliance officer, you can reach out to us at any time and we will help you with that. We also have a resources website page. So first, we're going to talk about adding collaborators in Zoomgrants. And just some tips to remember: you must be the application contact to add collaborators. You must assign them permissions for them to be able to see and do things in Zoomgrants when they log in. And you need to make sure you're updating the staff table if you have turnover or new employees, and that they're getting training on how to use Zoomgrants and they are adding them as a collaborator. And then remember, we have Zoomgrants customer service. They're there. You can email, call if you have issues. Okay, so how do I play? Okay, I'm going to play this video.
This is how to add collaborators to Zoomgrants. I have logged in as the application contact. You must be the application contact in order to add or remove collaborators. I'm finding the grant year that my application is in, 2023-2024, and here's my application. So I'm going to click it to enter the application. You'll see all these instructions on apportionment and application here. I can hide those. I will once the awards have been finalized, but you can also hide that by clicking that button that says hide this, hide this. That will just clean it up for you. And then on the summary tab, I'm going to go down to the bottom, and here are all my collaborators. If you do not see this, you may not be the application contact. In applicant information, this name and email address here is your application contact. Here you can add a collaborator. I just type in the email address, first name, last name, title. I can give them editing access and then click invite, and it will send them an email to invite them. Additional contacts can also be added, but they will only receive emails about information. They will not be a collaborator. Collaborators cannot submit, archive, or delete applications. Only the application contact can do that.
Okay, and just so you know, if you need to change who the application contact is, you can either call Zoomgrants customer service and tell them you need to change it, or send an email to their customer service, explain why you need to change it and who to change it to, and then CC me, and I can respond and say, I give permission for this change, and then they will go in and change it.
This is how to add collaborators to Zoomgrants. I have logged in as the
That's the wrong video. Oh no. Bear with me.
This video will show you how to submit an invoice for reimbursement.
Can you guys all see and hear this box that I opened?
If you have operating assistance funds or preventive maintenance funds or mobility management funds, anything that is a reimbursable activity, you will request for a payment reimbursement. And if you receive a vehicle, you will still have to know how to upload an invoice to upload your vehicle invoice after you've received your vehicle and put it into service. So the first way you can do this is assuming that you have access to invoicing because you've been added as a collaborator.
Okay, Glenda says they can't see the video. Let me stop sharing and reshare and see if that works. Okay.
Collaborator, you should see the Add Invoices button. If you directly click this, it will just open an invoice box and you can start your invoice, but you will not be able to see your budget beforehand. So I'm going to show you how to see the budget beforehand. So if you click your application and open that up, it will take you to your main summary page, and then you can click on the reimbursements tab. This tab could also say invoices or something depending on your application. If it stops loading and it's not showing, sometimes Zoomgrants does that, click it again. Okay, you should see any invoices that you've already created. You can delete invoices if you want. If you have a bunch of not submitted ones sitting here, please delete them because sometimes they can cause the program to calculate the remaining funds incorrectly. Okay. And then you're going to go down here to your funding uses and expenses and check your remaining balance. So I can see that I have $44,000 remaining in my temporary travel trainer budget. This area will also show you if you have invoices approved, invoices paid, what lines they were paid from, and all of that. If you notice any errors on your budget, either here or in your budget tab, Zoomgrants has added a new process. You can create a budget adjustment request, and that will send us a request to change your budget. So if anything looks incorrect, you can do that. We typically try to match your budget to your award so that you won't be confused by having the budget that you requested instead of the budget that you are awarded. So I'm going to click create a new invoice, and that's going to open another window where we will create an invoice, and then you will use the grant management guide to help you with your backup documentation. You need to have proof of payment and a cover sheet, and you must combine it all into one PDF. And if you've never done that before or you need assistance, Glenda, the compliance officer, or I, if I'm available, are more than happy to help you with that. Trista also knows how to do backup documentation, so if neither of us are available, she can help you as well.
Okay, sorry about that. The videos are getting all mixed up. I don't understand what's happening. Oh, okay. I think I skipped forward. Sorry. Okay, well, we watched how to submit a payment request. That wasn't, sorry. Okay, we jumped ahead a little bit. We'll go back. Okay, so that's how to add collaborators, and then we watched the video on how to submit payment requests, but I don't know why. Okay, so we're gonna go back a little bit. We'll come back to invoices. We're gonna talk about project goals and quarterly reports. In your application, you were asked to list project goals and milestones. These and the milestones we give to FTA will be put in your scope of work in your grant agreement. Make sure you read your grant agreement, especially the scope of work and budget sections. And we're going to do a lunch and learn probably in October about how to read your grant agreement. And make sure that you're addressing your goals and milestones and timelines in your quarterly report. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to submit the quarterly report, what types of questions are asked, who completes it, and when it is due. So
now I'm going to show you how to add and submit a quarterly report. I'm logged in, and these are my applications. You should see, if you have access, the Add Invoices button and the Add Quarterly Report button next to each of your applications. Those are shortcuts to get to that page. You don't have to use those. I will show you how to do it from your Application Summary tab. So once you're in your application, you can click on Quarterly Report. These green checks mean that I've already submitted those reports. This one will show me when the next report is due, and if one is late or missing, it should tell you there as well. And then you just answer these questions best that you can. Grant type is the type of award that you have. If your award doesn't fit here, you can use technology, just use that. But like vehicle and operations, like if you only have mobility management, just do either technology or contracted services, either one. I'll try to update these in the new grant so it won't say infrastructure, and I'll try to add some more options. Is your project not started, in progress, or complete? If it's not started, you have not signed your grant agreement. If it's in progress, you have signed your grant agreement, which means your project has started. And if it's complete, that means you've received everything you were awarded and all of your invoices have been turned in, and this is your last quarterly report. In your narrative, please describe how this project has impacted availability of transportation services in your area and how far along your project is. Please include any goals or milestones you have in your grant agreement scope of work or in your application. We try to build your grant agreement scope of work around the milestones and goals from your application. And then we also try to give you the milestones that FTA has so that you can address those in your quarterly report. Please give as much detail as you can about your timeline, your implementation plan, your staffing plan, how things are going. If you had incidental trips during the quarter, what were they for? Important project dates such as picking up a vehicle, putting it into service, if you had a civil rights complaint, if you had a vehicle that was damaged or in an accident, and let us know, if you uploaded that information to RidePilot, if you notified us, if staff followed policies, if there were any problems or they didn't follow policies, and how you will address that in the future. As much detail as possible in 3,000 characters. That will help us do our quarterly reports to FTA. Currently, quarterly reports are due the 5th, they're due the 1st, but you have 15 days to get them in. I think I'm going to have to change that deadline because I have to get my reports to the grant team by the 15th. So I might have to give you guys less time. I haven't wanted to change it yet because I don't want to change the older grants, but in the new grant, I might have to do maybe we'll do it slowly. We'll do the 10th. So you have 10 days to turn in your report instead of 15. That would just give me more time to give that information to the FTA. What is the number of individuals served in this reporting period? If you are running vehicles, you will probably be tracking those in RidePilot, and you can report those in here. If you have a bigger fleet, like vehicles that are not 5310 vehicles, you can still report those number of individuals if you're receiving operations funds, preventive maintenance, anything like that. Anything that's helping your project, and your project as a whole is your transportation program to help seniors and people with disabilities, you can report that. This is an estimate. We don't need exact numbers, but just try not to under-report on yourself. So if you're only reporting your 5310 vehicle trips, that's totally fine. Trips are down here. Sorry, I'm confused. Here are the trips. Up here, individuals served. What does that mean is a client. And you're not going to count your client every time you give them a ride. You're only going to count them once during the federal fiscal year, which runs October through September. And one-way trips, that's from point A to point B. And then from point B back to point A is another one-way trip. Incidental one-way trips is anything that involves you not having a client in the car. These were more important during COVID when vehicles were not taking clients, but it's still important for you to report, especially if a vehicle has been sitting for a while or if it's in the shop or something. You driving it to the shop, you driving it to get gas without a client, you doing things like that. You can count that as an incidental trip. If you have a staff car that doesn't take clients, then every trip will be an incidental trip, and you should still be reporting those. Trip purposes, just give a broad general explanation of what types of trips you take. I know it's different for each agency, and some agencies do all of the above, and that's totally fine. Okay, and then once I filled all that out, I can submit quarterly report. I think we can request documents, but I've never done that, so you don't have to upload any documents. You can just submit your quarterly report, and then up at the top, it will tell you if it's submitted, and you can refresh the page by clicking here to make sure it's submitted. Sometimes it doesn't submit and you have to do it twice. I know that's really annoying. Zoomgrants is aware of the issue, and they've said that they've fixed it, but I'm not sure. So submit your quarterly report, then click refresh, and just make sure that it has that green check and it's showing that you submitted it before you close your browser. Okay, and then quarterly report totals. This tab will show you your totals on your reports, so you can use that if you want that data. And there's other tabs, but I'm not going to go into all of those. And that's all.
Okay, so I talked about this in the video, but here it is in writing if you need to see it. I'm going to show you a little visual too of a one-way trip. It is taking a person from point A to point B multiplied by the number of clients. So if you have 5 clients in the car, and you're taking them from point A to point B, that's 5 one-way trips. No, the driver doesn't count. It's just the clients that you're counting. Incidental trips, any trip when a client's not in the vehicle. And then explain the incidental trips in your narrative in your quarterly report if you can. Most people put a spot like if you have a notes section on your pre and post trip award, they can write what the trip was for so that whoever's doing the quarterly reports is aware of that. And then I will also show you a visual on the timelines because it can be confusing because we're going off of FTA's fiscal year, which is October to September. So basically Q3 of the calendar year is when you start counting again, because that's the federal fiscal year. And I'll show you a visual because it's confusing. So this is one-way trips. Clients 1 through 5 leave location 1 on a bus. So there's 5 people in there. 5 individuals are served in this trip. They travel to location 2. That counts as 5-way trips, 5 one-way trips. All the clients return to location 1. That's another 5 one-way trips. So we went to the zoo. We went back. That's 10 total one-way trips. Your quarterly report narrative should include things like the date your vehicle was delivered, placed in service, important dates, milestones, goals. If you were late on a report, why? If you had an internal audit, how did it go? If you had a site visit, how did it go? Anything to update us. And then we are going to change, like I said in the video, we have to move our due dates back because of the FTA wants. We have to do quarterly milestone reports now. We used to do annual, but now for 5310, we have to do them quarterly. So I have to get all of my information to our grants team by the 15th. So I'm going to have to make your quarterly report due dates the 10th so that I can get that information to our team by the 15th. So these are going to be, I thought I changed these in the visual. I think I did in the other. I'll have a grant timeline where this is one so that it matches the federal fiscal year, but basically it's due the 10th following that quarter. Where's my mouse? Annual reports. We need your federal certs and assurances signed every year. The FTA releases this document and we send it to you in DocuSign. And we'll also send you a reminder to send us your financial reports, which we will go over in the next slide. You do not, sorry, this says must be uploaded in your documents section in Zoomgrants. You don't have, well, go ahead and do it, but we have copies now that we're doing them through DocuSign. We have digital copies. And then the federal master agreement, you do not have to sign that, but it comes out at the same time as the certs and assurances every year. And it basically is a guiding agreement to all grant agreements in any program. You can read it if you want. We will send you a copy of it, but you don't need to sign that one. But every agency does need to sign the certs and assurances every year. UTA also signs that every year. Our board reviews it and they sign it. We also need your financial report every year. You can just email it to us or upload it in Zoomgrants and let us know. This can also be your single audit. It can be, some government agencies have what's called, I've seen it, a different acronym, but it's a comprehensive annual financial review. It needs to include things like your assets, your liabilities, expenses, investments, donations. It should separate grants or federal funding out from other revenue because we have to be able to tell what percentage of funding you receive is federal. And then a new thing is coming out, which I know I have a slide for later, where you'll have to put a statement on your financial report starting October 2024. And I will show you what that statement has to have. And we can make like a cover sheet where you just sign it and put it on the cover of your audit or your financial report. It's not required yet, but that will be a change in the uniform guidance, and it will be required on your invoices too. So I will show you what that looks like. If you have internal audits, you must include the results of your audit in your report, any corrective action plans, audit findings, recommendations. Your audits have to follow generally accepted government auditing standards. Single audits are required for any agency receiving over $750,000 annually in federal grants. Closeout reports. When your project is completed, or at least 2 years of quarterly reports. If 2 years pass and your project's still not completed, you have to keep reporting, okay? Until you get everything and your project is closed out and done. You can complete the closeout form. We now have it on a Google form that you can just fill out and then send us an email to say, hey, I filled out all my forms, all my invoices are in, and I believe that I don't need to do my quarterly reports anymore. That will give our compliance officer a chance to review everything and make sure that you've turned everything in. And then we will turn off your quarterly reports so you won't get alerts. And then just a reminder to those that will have vehicles or federal assets, actually just vehicles for reporting in RidePilot. You must still report in RidePilot until the federal useful life is met on the vehicle. And we have to maintain continuous control of the assets through its federal life and beyond. We do not release the lien on the title anymore. We will keep the title so that you will have to contact us if you want to dispose of the vehicle so that we can follow the federal guidelines on disposal. Also, once a vehicle has met its useful life, the, what's it called? Never mind, I'll skip that. I'm sure I'll think of it later. If the vehicle is sold for over $5,000, the excess amount must be returned to FTA. They no longer allow us to reprogram that funding. We have to return it to FTA. So this is an old thing I should have updated. Sorry, it is updated in the grant management guide. And then also they are making changes to the uniform guidance to extend that 5,000 to 10,000, but UTA has to adopt that policy because we are allowed to have stricter policies. So that will go to our board and they will review it to see if they want to adopt it. If they decide to adopt it, it probably won't go into effect until 2025. So if that happens, I will let you know. But for the time being, the rule is 5,000. Anything over 5,000 has to be returned. Okay, now we're to operating invoices. So we already watched the video. So sorry, I kind of mixed up the videos there. We're going to talk about, actually in your grant management guide, there is a section on allowable costs. So that section is important. I also tell you where in the circulars you can find the cost principles, where it covers everything that's not covered, everything that is covered. So make sure you have your grant management guide and you look at that section if you're new to operating invoices. We also have a guide on how to compile backup documentation in there. And I will show you how to create an invoice. I guess we already watched that, so we can skip that. And you can receive payment. We will send you, skip it. Okay, so we'll send you payment. This is a different video on what the invoice looks like. So we watched the video that in Zoomgrants where you find the invoices, how you check your budget, and then you click create an invoice. Then this window will pop up on the screen, and this is how you fill it out.
Okay, this is what an invoice looks like when you click create an invoice. It will open this box and you will see a bunch of information here. That is for the compliance officer to help them process your invoice. So you don't have to worry about these contract numbers, account codes, anything like that. But it will show you your period of performance and the dates in which you are allowed to incur costs and bill for costs in that period, and when invoices, the final date you can submit invoices in this grant. And the invoice number, please keep it below 10 characters. The compliance officer may change it if there's a duplicate, or if it's too long, or if it doesn't match our the way we do invoice numbers. And the backup guide and grant management guide will also show you this. Mine would be like UTA, and I'm going to submit for the quarter ending in June 30th, 2024. So I'm going to do that as my invoice number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 11 characters. So maybe I would just take out the 0, or maybe I would just do UT. So there's different ways you can shorten it. The compliance officer might also add a descriptor like this for operations or capital. You might see that, and that's just so that they know what's in that invoice, but that's not part of the invoice number. Then you will put the amount you're requesting in your from your line item. So remember, we looked at our temporary travel trainer and we had $44,000 remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and request $44,000 because I know I have that there. The description, travel trainer salary. I'm just going to say that. I can spell it. And then, is this my final invoice? Yes, it will be, because I'm requesting the full amount. So I will not be submitting another invoice. And then remember that we have a backup guide to help you in the grant management manual for creating those backup documents and your cover sheet. You're going to put them together in one PDF file and upload them here. This is a new thing that will be required after October of 2024. We're just adding it now because we want to, stay current on this stuff. So we have added this invoice certification. Basically, you're just saying, I am aware that I'm not submitting anything fake, and then you sign your name there. And then submit the invoice, okay? See, it won't let you without uploading documents or signing that.
Okay. So if you are new to operating assistance and you need further help with that process, go ahead and contact us, read through your manual, use it to help you. Your backup documentation should contain a cover sheet that summarizes how much you are requesting by category and total amounts, federal amounts, local match amounts, etc. There are examples in your grant management guide. Driver wages can be payroll with check numbers, or it can be an Excel spreadsheet if it's with an Excel spreadsheet if it's easy to cross reference to the payroll, or you need proof of payment. If your payroll has more employees than drivers, highlight the drivers that you're requesting salary from. Be very specific in what you're requesting so it makes it easy for the officer. If they have issues with it, they will send it back to you and ask you to change the way it looks. We will not be able to make changes or updates to it for you, because with that certification, we don't want to take on the role of certifying your finances are accurate. So we have to rely on you. We will send it back to you and say, hey, make these changes. Okay. You must have valid receipts or bank statements proving payment. We also have examples of that in the guide of different things it can be. Eligible expenses only. Remember to check the allowable expense section in the guide. And then if it's not there, you can reference the cost principles circular. And if it's still not clear, let us know and we can discuss it. Operating assistance is covered at 50%. So you take your total expenses and then you're requesting 50% of that. And the other 50% is your agency's responsibility. You can use other sources of local match, but they have to be allowable sources of local match, such as local state funds, private donations, things like that. Preventive maintenance or mobility management are both covered at 80%, and 20% is your agency's responsibility, but you will show us what your total expenses are in that invoice. And then on the cover sheet, break it out, and then in the invoice, you request the 80%. Mobility management is about making short-term plans and projects to help different transportation services work better together. It's done through coordination with different groups like governments, and it does not involve actually running any transportation services. So we're not talking about fleet managers. Mobility management is its own project that you have to apply for. So if you did not apply for mobility management funds, don't try to bill for fleet manager stuff under mobility management. That's not what it's for. If you have questions about mobility management, let us know. We can explain it. But basically, most of you are either going to be doing operating assistance or preventive maintenance. If you run out of preventive maintenance funds, you can use operating to cover preventive maintenance, but it is covered at a lower percentage. Okay, 2 CFR 200 subpart E cost principles. I referred to that. That is where it says what all the covered expenses are. It goes into a lot more details on what is allowed, what is not allowed. But these are basic covered expenses: driver wages, benefits, driver recruitment, background checks, fuel, maintenance, vehicle insurance, things like that. Remember to check the guide. Okay. And then here's some visuals of what the federal fiscal year looks like. In this example, I'm using 2023. Operating expenses are the costs needed to keep a public transportation system running smoothly. Operating can be backdated to the start of the federal fiscal year, which is October of that previous year, basically. So if we're talking federal fiscal year 2023, you can backbill any activities that are allowable to October 2022. Remember that operating assistance and preventive maintenance are reimbursement-based projects, meaning you should have the funds to run the project and cover costs until you can be reimbursed. And then here are the quarters: quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So you'll have 4 quarterly reports, and you can do an invoice for each quarter. Some agencies that are very large, if you get permission, you can do monthly invoices. I think the only one currently who's doing that is like First Step House, because their documents, they just have so many documents that it's easier for them to do by month, but then they have way more invoices, and it just is harder for our officer to process all those. So if you can do them quarterly, that is preferred. Here's an example of the federal fiscal year 2024 again: quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So this application cycle, you should have 8 quarterly reports, unless your project goes over that. But basically 8 quarterly reports and 8 invoices if you're doing reimbursement for operating or preventive maintenance. Federal fiscal year, forgot to say one thing. Also, if your quarterly report has not been turned in, the compliance officer can hold your invoices and not pay them until your quarterly report is turned in, or until you are up to date on Ride Pilot. She will reach out to you quarterly or more often if needed, if you're out of compliance, and let you know if you're missing that stuff, and we can hold payment until you're caught up on those things. Federal fiscal year 2025 for reimbursements. So I just wanted to make this clear, because you're thinking, right, oh, clear back to October 2022, but we haven't even signed our grant agreements yet because we're still waiting on FTA to approve. It gets kind of confusing. So those are the 2 years, right? You sign your grant agreements in October 2024. Hopefully, we've only had 1 grant approved so far, and the FTA closes on the 23rd. So I'm like begging them to approve the rest of our grants. They're just taking a long time to review them. So hopefully grant agreements go out in October. June 2025, all your invoices can be submitted for 2023 and 2024. And then in September 2025, your projects are completed. Okay. If you have questions about that, let us know. I know it's confusing. Vehicles don't really run on these deadlines because with vehicles, we can't control when the vendor is going to bring us the vehicles. Ever since COVID messed up supply chains, we're at the mercy of these companies like Ford and Toyota and the vendors and when they can receive the vehicles. So sometimes the deadlines get pushed and you have to keep doing your quarterly reports until you get the vehicle and you get it in service. Okay. Invoice submissions, again, should match your quarterly reports and you'll label them by each quarter. So this is just an example of like what my invoice numbers would look like for each quarter. You can send in your invoices for 2023 as soon as you sign your grant agreement. And then you can send your 4 invoices. I'm sorry, if you send invoices for both years by quarter, again, that would be 8 invoices for your entire operating budget. Period of performance is the time when you're supposed to finish the things you promised to do with the grant money. So that's the time you can incur activities that you can request reimbursement for. These dates will also be in your grant agreement and at the top of your invoice, like I showed you, I have added it there so that it's clear what you can invoice for. For vehicles, again, I already said this, but capital projects run on a different timeline. We cannot order the vehicles until after the grant agreements are executed. And vehicles can take 1 to 2 years to be constructed and delivered if we cannot buy them directly off a lot. Instances when we can buy them directly off the lot is if it's like a non-accessible vehicle that does not require a conversion or things like that. As soon as the vehicles come and you pick it up, you can start reporting in RidePilot, submit your invoice in Zoomgrants showing you got the vehicle. We will give you a list, a checklist of all the things, and I'll go more into that in the vehicles section. Okay, so the takeaways from everything we've covered: completing quarterly reports on time and with complete information, completing closeout report at the end of your project with evaluation and measurement of how the project met its goals. That is due by September 30th, 2025. So you have to have all your invoices in by 6/30/2025, but then by uniform guidance, you are allowed 90 days to get in any missing invoices, reports, or anything that we need before we close the grant. Remember to give us your financial reports or audits and sign the certs and assurances every year. Be aware of what costs are allowable before you bill for them. Submitting for reimbursement invoices on time and with your quarterly reports. Your quarterly report deadlines are changing to the 10th for this grant award, and activities must be within the period of performance. Okay, we are going to take a little break. Please be back at 10:35 and we will continue so that we can try to be done by noon is my goal. Okay, so everyone take a break, be back at 10:35, grab a drink, go to the bathroom. All right. For anyone who came in late, just a reminder, please put your name and agency in the chat for attendance. Also in the chat, you can find a copy of the grant management guide and the slides from this training to download. I recommend printing the grant management guide so that you have a copy to read through or take notes on. And we will start in 1 minute.
Alika, well, I found the grant management or the post-award slides. I did not find the grant management in the chat.
It's at the very top. I can try putting it in again. Let's see.
I wonder if it came after I signed in
Yeah, maybe.
or before I signed in.
Okay, I'll upload it again, and then also it's on our website too for anyone who can't download it. Oh, it let me reshare. Okay. It worked? Reshare older file, it said. Did it appear? I can email it to you too, John.
Okay.
I just added it. I don't know if anybody can get it.
Thank you, Levi.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start. Everyone should be back now. How do I get to, there we go. Okay, so we did an overview on Zoomgrants. Sorry that I'm going fast, but it's just a lot to cover. And remember, you can always, if you're like, I didn't understand that section, you can always go back to this video and watch it after I put it on YouTube, or find that section in the grant management guide and read more details about it, or reach out to us. We've covered Zoomgrants, how to add collaborators, submit quarterly reports, invoices. In this next section, we're going to talk about oversight and risk. We will cover site visits, inspections, risk assessments, audits, policies, driver training, that kind of thing. And then we'll get into civil rights at the end. So to start off, site visits and risk assessments help us to deter, detect, and prevent compliance issues, fraud, loss or damage to federal assets, and identify risks that things like that pose to not only your agency, but to UTA, who is held accountable if those things happen by a subrecipient. So we perform site visits typically every 2 years. If your agency is a high risk, and we will talk about what that means in the next slide, you might require a site visit annually. If you're a low risk and you've been a low risk for a while, we might reduce site visits or put you on a different type of compliance plan that involves like desk reviews and things like that. And we'll talk about why and what those risks are. In a site visit, we look at a lot of documents, and we will send you a list of all the documents you need to give us so that you can prepare. You can give them to us digitally so that we have time to review them before we come to your site visit and meet with you. I've found that that has helped speed the process along, and it lets us know what kind of questions to ask when we're there, rather than sitting at a table for a full day reading through all your documents. So that has sped up the process a lot. We also will ask you questions at the site visit. We may inspect some of your vehicles, and we will let you know ahead of time which ones are due for an inspection. We will pull a sample of your pre and post-trip inspections that you have to complete, and we will return to our office and complete our risk assessment and our notes. And then if we have more questions while we're doing the risk assessment portion, we might email or call you before we send you all of the notes and results. Then we will send you all of that. If we have any action items that you need to address, we give you 30 days to address those. Or if you need more than 30 days, you can send us a corrective action plan with your own deadlines and goals spelled out, and we will hold you to those timelines that you set for yourself, basically. Okay, a risk assessment. Risks can be medium, low, or high. We've adapted this risk. If you've been in this program for a while, you've seen it take on different looks. It used to be kind of a point system, and then we realized that that wasn't giving us a lot of information. So now we've done more of a narrative version that gives us a lot more information about why we see risk in certain areas. Risk can increase or decrease the level of oversight your agency might require, and it can affect your application score. But risk does not always mean you're doing a bad job of running this program. That is not what it means. So I like to say, think of it from the perspective of the FTA. So they're thinking about financial risk. Okay, so if you're a new agency, you might be a high risk because you've never managed federal funds before. If you receive a lot of federal funding, you might be a high risk based solely on the amount of funding that you're receiving. So there are different reasons of why you might be a high risk. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, your policies are terrible and you are not managing your drivers correctly. I find that sometimes people take it personally when they are a high risk, and it's not always about that. Okay, there are a lot of factors that the FTA has us look at, and but we will try to give you feedback on how you can reduce your risk to help you in that way. And then here are some ideas too of ways you can lower your risk. And then we do a risk assessment every year. So we do give you a chance, like we'll say, this is how you can improve your risk assessment. And then next year when we do another risk assessment, maybe it will lower or change. If you're an agency that receives a ton of federal funding and you don't have other sources, you might always be a high risk. Or, if you have so many federal assets, you might just remain a high risk, and that just means more oversight. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad agency. So I hope that helps clarify what that means. We're not saying, hey, you're doing a bad job. We're just saying the FTA wants us to look at your program more in depth because of these areas that show you might be a high risk to receive funding. And other ways you can reduce your risk: turn in your reports on time, update Zoomgrants to any staff changes so that you can keep in good communication and you're up to date and you're attending the meetings to stay up to date, and attending all of our trainings and lunch and learns so that if changes come out in the uniform guidance or things like that, you can stay up to date. Maybe you're attending ERSTA trainings, all of that, so that you can stay up to date on the best practices of running this type of program. Sorry about that. It wasn't changing. Okay, vehicle inspections. UTA will inspect vehicles every 2 years. Subrecipients should be doing a full inspection of their vehicles on the off years. We used to try to get you to send those to us, but it was a lot of bugging you, and we just ask that you do it, please. We don't need copies of them. Just please, in the off years, make sure you're getting it checked. A lot of times you're basically doing that at scheduled maintenance checks, but it's good to just have your fleet manager do an inspection of the vehicle to check for other things. Vehicle inspection checklists are available on our website's resources page, but also in the grant management guide, it will list the minimum things of like what your pre and post trip inspections need to have. And then we have examples of vehicle inspection sheets in different ways. You are allowed to change it. You don't have to follow our templates, but they do have to meet the minimum requirements. And so for an example of doing it slightly different, at UTA, we have some electric vehicles that are staff vehicles, but they are federally funded. So we do our pre and post trip sheets that we keep in a binder in the car. And then we just fax them to our fleet manager who puts them into RidePilot. But we've reduced kind of what is required on the sheet, and it's just simplified the basics that we need to fill out the RidePilot report and what is meets the minimum requirements. And we don't make the drivers, for example, look under the hood or anything like that. We have the fleet manager then do a quarterly report where he's like doing more in-depth, looking under the hood, checking the oil, that kind of thing. Because these are staff cars and they're not being used every day and they're not taking clients, that process works for us. If you're using them every day and you are transporting clients, you might have to have a little bit more strict policies than that. So it kind of just depends on your vehicle, your processes, your policies, and what works for you, as long as you're meeting the minimum requirements. UTA will also perform a federal asset inventory. This is kind of a new thing that we have to do for FTA. And I can never remember if it's 2 or 3 years, but someone, usually like Christy or Clint, or it could be anyone from UTA, they come out, they have to take a picture of your asset and they upload it to like a map that has all of UTA's assets. It's like a huge inventory that they do. So that is separate from a vehicle inspection. That's not, Glenda or Robert coming out and inspecting your vehicle. It's separate. It's just them verifying that the asset is still in your possession and it's in relatively good condition. They'll use the condition rating system, I believe, and then they have to take a picture. So it's really fast. Agency inspections, again, you have to do pre and post trip inspections. If you are getting a vehicle for the first time, we will go more into vehicles, but all of these have examples, templates, and stuff on our website, or you can ask me for other examples or Glenda, and we can provide those to you. External audits. UTA gets a triennial review by the FTA. That means every 3 years, the FTA is looking at UTA and auditing us. And they will typically choose 1 to 2 subrecipients to also review. So keep that in mind. They could choose you. Usually they give us a couple days notice so that we can notify you. And last time they did not come out in person. They did it virtually and they interviewed the subrecipient. But in the past, sometimes they do fly out to Utah and they will actually go to the subrecipient's agency and visit. So that can happen. You could also be audited by the Inspector General or the GAO office. I've never seen that happen, but it could happen. Findings versus recommendations. In an external audit, a finding means you're either breaking a law or a regulation or some agreement, like your grant agreement or something. A recommendation is an area of concern, but there's no violation. It's just, hey, you might want to improve this, or hey, this could help your risk level, that kind of thing. If we have any like findings in your site visit with us, we just call them action items because we're not really auditors, right? We're just doing a review of your program and telling you how to improve it. And then again, single audits is a type of external audit that is required if you receive over $750,000 federally on an annual basis. But I know a lot of big organizations just pay for a single audit anyway, and I think that's a great idea. If you don't have an audit, you can send us, again, other financial reports, and we can give you examples of what those look like and what you need to have on there. The most common pitfalls that we see in site visits are not submitting quarterly reports on time, or they don't have enough info. They just say like, project's going great. That doesn't help us when we're doing our reports to the FTA. We need to show like how milestones are being met and if there's anything wrong, that kind of thing. Not using Ride Pilot consistently or correctly. And we're going to talk more about Ride Pilot in the vehicle section if you're new to vehicles. Not responding to written communication, emails, letters, Title VI plan deficiencies. I see not so much anymore. We've gotten a lot tighter and better on our Title VI and ADA plans, so that's awesome. Not billing for operations regularly. More and more auditors are looking at this. That's why we're getting more strict on our timelines. And UTA needs to be reimbursing your operations regularly, not all at once, you know, the last day of your grant. Please don't wait till the end. It puts a lot of stress on our compliance officer and our accounting department to get all of those paid quickly, because we have our own timelines to meet with FTA on paying those out and drawing down funds from the FTA. So make sure that we're meeting those correctly. The FTA, so just to explain and give some background of why that's important. Well, how it works is we approve your invoice and we pay you. And then we have to follow the same process with FTA. We go to FTA and we say, hey, we need to be reimbursed for this payment that we made. And then we draw down the funds and it goes into our account, similar to how you do it to us, okay? They look at that every quarter, and if we haven't done drawdowns in a long time, they're like, what's wrong? Do you not need this money? Should we take it back? So we have to be also regularly doing drawdowns and invoice requests basically to the FTA to show we are spending those funds. So that might help you understand of why it's important that you need to bill for those regularly. High turnover is also something we see a lot of times. There's turnover and then no one tells anyone about the grant management guide or what an LCC meeting is, right? And they're like, I have no idea. Or you get turnover and people don't know that the vehicles are federal assets and they sell them or something. So, you know, make sure that you have policies and you're training your employees on what these grant requirements are. Federal grants just have a lot more strings and a lot more requirements than like a local state grant or a local foundation grant where they're like, your project sounds great, here's a check. And that's it, right? Federal's way different. And it does require a lot of training and a lot of knowledge. Lack of written policies can also hurt agencies a lot. We try our best to give you examples and help you improve your written policies because that protects you as well. Lack of project goals and milestones. We've also gotten a lot better on those, and also putting them in the grant agreements has helped. So, all right, now we're going to talk about civil rights a little bit. Let me take a drink. Like I said, I'm not going to show the whole 20-minute FTA video because I want to get you guys out of here by lunch is my goal. So I'm just going to review the Title VI plan. Most of you have them already. If you are a new subrecipient and you need a little bit more help in developing a Title VI plan for the first time, let us know. We are more than happy to help you. We have some really great templates that will walk you through each section and what your Title VI plan should have. Actually, we have an even better one for ADA, but Title VI, we do have some examples and templates. Title VI plan is required by your agency. It should also include a public notice, and the next slide will go over that. It also needs to have instructions on how the public can file a complaint and your process for reviewing it. And it also needs to have our contact in case the person who filed the complaint with you doesn't feel like it's resolved. They can reach out to UTA for a complaint as well. We have to be given any complaints that you receive, any investigations or lawsuits, you have to let us know. You also need to include a public participation plan. Now, that was a little confusing because UTA kind of does that for you as far as the local coordinated councils go. And if you're not doing any transportation planning that affects the public, you don't need to worry so much about that because we do the local coordinated plan. And so that part you don't need to worry about. Now, a language access plan or an LEP plan, you do have to have in your Title VI because all of you are in different areas. And what it is a 4-factor analysis that uses census data in your area to determine if you are required to provide different languages of Title VI complaint information and other policies and stuff. Usually in Utah, especially in Salt Lake City, that is Spanish. Some other places don't require that. If you have to provide things in Spanish, we do have our Title VI and ADA public notice posters available in Spanish, but your complaint sheets and everything like that also have to be in Spanish so that someone can equally file a complaint easily if they don't speak English. So if you have to go through that process, it's best if you find a translator to help you with that. If you're having difficulties, reach out to us. We can see what we can do to help you because we have a Title VI officer at UTA that can help with those types of things. Title VI and ADA public notices, we have templates, posters on our website, like I said, in English and Spanish. You literally just have to add your agency's information and contact information and print them out and put them in all of your 5310 vehicles where the writers can see it. It should also be on your agency website with complaint instructions or forms. If your complaint process includes an online form, that should be on your website. If you have UDOT funded vehicles as well, they might have separate requirements and a different poster with their contact information to go in their vehicles. But please have both UTA and UDOT contact information on your full plan that's on your website. If your LEP, LAP, I've seen it called different things, shows that you must offer Spanish, again, we have posters available in Spanish, and we do have an interpreter line. I have like cards if you need that. But again, your Title VI plan should address how you will handle those situations. So I've had people sometimes ask me how to handle those situations, and I have to say, refer back to your Title VI plan. Also, your Title VI plan has to be updated every 3 years, and it should be reviewed and signed by your board every 3 years. And then we need a new copy of it when it's updated. Your ADA plan is a little less formal like that. It doesn't need to be like approved by your board and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be updated every 3 years, but you must have an ADA plan for demand response transportation. If you are running a 5310 fleet, it is considered demand response transportation. I think sometimes there's some confusion about what's the other one? I can't think of the word, sorry. Demand response means like you're scheduling it, right? I'm a client, I'm scheduling a trip. It's not available to the public. Transportation programs that are available to the public have a lot different like requirements in an ADA plan. Yours is going to be a demand response transportation plan. And we have templates that National RTAP have designed, and it's really great, and it will walk you through everything you have to have in there. It includes things like reasonable modifications, priority seating, service animals, staff training, rider information, your complaint procedures, passenger assistance, and accommodation of mobility devices, and more. And it will walk you through all of that. So if you have never done that process before, we can send you the template and help you with that. When we're doing your site visit, site review, whatever, we will also review this and let you know if we see any issues. And your EEO statement. I see some typos on my thing, but your EEO statement needs to look something like this. There are minimums that the government says it has to like include. I think example 1 is like the minimum. Example 2 is a little bit more above and beyond. So you can decide what type of EEO statement you want to have as long as it meets the minimum required by the government, and just put it on your website. It doesn't have to be in the vehicles or anything like that. Just make sure a statement is somewhere on your website. A lot of people, I have examples of some agencies' web pages. If you need an example, they just have a web page called like Civil Rights, and it has the EEO statement. It will have their Title VI plan, their ADA plan. It will have complete forms, and it's just all on one page. All right, so we're done with civil rights. Hopefully that was shorter than that 20-minute video. And less boring, because that 20-minute video is pretty boring. Okay, budget and program funding, we're going to move through pretty quick. I do have a lunch and learn recorded on budgeting if you want to look at that for more information. But this is just a quick glimpse of, I think this is actually different because this is my view. So yours is not going to look quite like this. I did show what your view might look like in that video, but you will see your budget. Like this, it will tell you what your contract budget is. That is your award amount. And then we will change all of these amounts to match your contract budget so it's less confusing, because this looks confusing, right? I requested $32,000 total. Well, these match. Okay, never mind. These match. This is not an example. But let's say I requested $300,000 in operations, but I only received $46,998. Those are going to be different, and it's confusing. So we're going to try to update this to match your contracted budget and what you are awarded. Reimbursements. Your reimbursements tab will look something like this. I also showed you this on the video, but just a reminder that this is your remaining balance on each of your line items. And then in your grant agreement, you will also see a budget with these line items and what you were awarded for each one. You can ignore the funding sources. This is more for us, and it tells us what grant your funding came out of. If you applied in multiple UZAs, you might have multiple funding sources, but this is also where you can find your grant number if you don't know what grant number you were awarded from. Now, these are not there yet for FFY2023-24 application because we don't get the grant number assigned until FTA has approved your grant awards. Okay, program funding. Again, to lower your risk, you want to diversify your funding. You can do fundraisers for your local match. You can coordinate with larger organizations with a similar mission or third-party contracts. Plan for long-term project life is something that the FTA wants to see so that you're not just relying on the federal funds to run your whole project. And since COVID, the FTA also suggests disaster planning and having those plans, and that will show that you are reducing risk. Excuse me. Use project evaluation and risk assessments to see if your agency can handle applying for more grants. I wish I had the link. I was in a training like 2 years ago It was a Utah chapter training for the Grant Professional Association. If any of you are interested in joining that, they're a really great local, they have a local chapter and they do some cool trainings and stuff. I think Trista is on their board still, maybe. But they showed an example of an online form that is available for free that agencies and nonprofits can use to fill out and see if they can handle the responsibilities of taking on another grant. So I thought that was a really cool resource. I will look around and try to see if I can find the website. But there are things like that out there for evaluating your programs and your agencies to see if you can handle taking on more grants. So those are great tools to use. All right, we're going to get into vehicles. All right. My throat's closing up. There's a lot of talking. Okay. So if you're receiving a vehicle and you've never received a vehicle before, wake up, turn on your listening ears. Here we go. Signing your agreement is step one. We cannot order vehicles until you sign your agreement. Then the coordinated mobility manager will order vehicles. The vendor and match invoices will be sent to you when the vehicle is ready. And then our compliance officer will reach out to you to schedule a time to meet at the DMV to get your title and registration, all that organized. When you get the email, it will include the invoice we received from the vendor that will have your vehicle information on it, including your VIN, the total cost of the vehicle, and all of the information you might need to add that vehicle to your insurance plan. You must add the vehicle to your insurance plan before we can hand over the vehicle, because you can't drive it off the lot until it's, registered and has insurance. So at that time, you should start getting it on your insurance, and then it will also include a match invoice request. The match will be requesting the amount you have to bring to pick up the vehicle. And I will say this multiple times throughout this training, but please don't send the check to us, especially if it doesn't have the invoice attached. If your agency requires it to be mailed, please attach the invoice so that when our accounting department receives it, they know what to do with it, because UTA is a huge agency. We're receiving checks all the time from different vendors. And if a check comes and it doesn't have a PO number or an invoice number with it, they just put it into our revenue account. And then it's really hard for us to track it down. This is not UTA revenue, so it has to go specifically into the account that the vehicle was, like, into our local match account. So that's why it's important to bring the check with you to pick up the vehicle and hand it to us so we can make sure that accounting puts it in the correct account. Okay. If you have to mail it, again, just make sure it's somehow attached or includes the information of the invoice that was given to you, like the UTA invoice number or something like that, because that will help the accounting team figure out where to put that check. Then you'll meet at the DMV and complete the process. That's kind of a new process. We've tried so many different ways, and we finally found that if we go to the DMV with you, we can ensure that the DMV is not asking you to do things that you don't need to do. If you're a nonprofit, for example, you don't need to pay taxes. So things like that. So we'll go to the DMV with you and help you with that. You may have to pay a registration fee or something like that. Then you will go to Riverside, pick up your vehicle from us. And at that time, when you're picking up the vehicle, we will complete a checklist, and then you'll have to sign it. And then we give you a checklist that you have to complete before you put that vehicle in service. It will say things like, make sure insurance card and registration are in the car. Make sure your Title VI posters are in the car. Make sure your vehicle is in Ride Pilot and that you have received Ride Pilot training. And I will talk about in the next slide how you do that. Make sure the date you're placing the vehicle into service is added into Ride Pilot in the compliance events section, and then all of your scheduled maintenance is in there, and it's scheduled out to 100,000 miles. And I will talk more about that. And there's, of course, more information in the grant management guide. If this is your first vehicle or first time training, you will need to contact Clint Wilkinson before receiving your vehicle, but I wouldn't do it until you've gotten notice from us that your vehicle will be coming soon, because you'll just forget everything, right? So wait a while, call him, say, I need Ride Pilot training. He will set up your agency with an account. If we know the VIN number, he will put that vehicle in there for you. He will train you on how to put in trips and record trips, how to complete your scheduled maintenance, and how to upload documents and photos and whatever else in there. You can also put things like warranties and insurance and things like that into Ride Pilot. Ride Pilot is a program that we offer to you to use for free. It used to have dispatching software included, but it no longer does. And the old Ride Pilot that had dispatching software is dead and gone. So we have this newer version. It's very simple to use, but you cannot use it to do dispatching, but you can use it to record all of your fleet if you want. It is free for you to use. And yeah, Clint can train you on that. Make sure you've been granted access in your Zoomgrants by your application contact person. Also, if you are the one who's going to be doing that reporting and invoicing, sometimes agencies have a different person for Zoomgrants and a different person for Ride Pilot. So make sure those two people know how to communicate so that the person who's doing the quarterly reports can put in the trips and information into that quarterly report. And again, UTA is the lien holder on the title. We used to release titles when the vehicle met its useful life. That caused issues. So we instead now are following UDOT's policy on retaining those titles until you dispose of the vehicle. Once your vehicle has met its useful life, which is a federally determined amount of time, typically for vehicles, it's 4 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first. You don't have to report in Ride Pilot anymore, but you do need to keep that vehicle and you need to keep it on your asset inventory sheet, which I will talk about. And we will not need to inspect the vehicle every 2 years once it's met its useful life, but we may still come to take pictures of it to prove that it's in your possession. If we're doing an asset inventory, I'm still not clear if they will be recording assets that have met their useful life in that asset inventory or not. So I'm just saying it could happen. Okay, Zoomgrants versus Ride Pilot. So we've talked about these two programs, and it's important if you're new to understand the difference between those programs. Zoomgrants is for your quarterly reports, your budget, your application, your invoices, your contact information for your agency, and any important documents that you need to save. Your Ride Pilot is for vehicle oversight, managing trips, maintenance events, preventive maintenance logs, tracking miles, vehicle identification, date the vehicle was placed into service, incidents, insurance, warranties. And I forgot to explain, why is it important to know the date it was placed into service? This has to be in Ride Pilot and on your asset inventory sheet, which is basically a spreadsheet where you track all of your federal assets. And we have templates you can use for that. But that date determines the beginning of the useful life. So the date you place the vehicle into service starts that clock of 4 years or 100,000 miles, whichever. I mean, the miles don't affect the date placed into service, but typically you will meet the 4 years before you meet the 100,000 miles typically. So that's why that date is important. How are we doing on time? Good. Ride Pilot. This is what Ride Pilot looks like. This is an overview. Clint will give you a much more detailed training and he can walk you through it, but you'll have a vehicles tab with the information on your vehicle, and make sure you fill all of this out when you get your vehicle. As I've talked about before, we received funds in this grant year to make some changes to Ride Pilot. So currently it says, is this an FTA 5310 vehicle? That's confusing because if it's met its useful life, but it says yes, it's still appearing on our reports, which might confuse our compliance officer. I'm trying to add another field which will say, has this vehicle met its useful life, or is there a lien on the title of this vehicle, so that we can use that to determine if it's on our report. And you can keep this as a yes, even when it's met its useful life. Sorry, that might be confusing. Don't worry about it if you didn't understand. Just know that there will be some changes made to Ride Pilot, and I will let you know when those changes have taken place, and we can do, you know, a little training in the LCC meeting on what those changes look like when those happen. Okay. In case of damage to the vehicle, you must have policies stating that the driver needs to notify, or the fleet manager, somebody needs to notify UTA if it's one of our vehicles within 24 hours of the incident. You need to fill out an incident or accident report or form that is kept in the vehicle, and upload that to Ride Pilot and send it to us. Include any police reports, pictures of the damage, anything like that. If the vehicle is a total loss, we may need to work with your insurance company, or you just let us know what your insurance company said. If there's a payout, we have to figure out how that will affect the asset, and it can take some time. So just communicate with us, let us know what's going on with the vehicle. Typically, if there's an insurance payout and the vehicle is a total loss, you will have to replace the vehicle and put it back into service, and it will still be a federal asset. For more information, you can look in the guidebook. You can also call our offices or email us at any time. Okay, driver training. You need to have written policies for your drivers, like driver handbooks. You need to have a written policy on what drivers are trained on, and it needs to match the training list in the grant management guide for the minimum topics that drivers need to be trained on to be running 5310 vehicles. We also have nationalrtap.org is a good free service that you can use for training drivers. If this program's new to you and you don't have your own driver training, that's totally fine. You can use this service. What you do basically is create a login. So have your fleet manager basically, or your manager, whoever's overseeing the drivers, have that person create a login, a free login for National RTAP. And then it's like their e-learning portal is what it's called. And then you can call National RTAP. They have their phone number on their website and say, you know, I'm running a fleet and I need to set up drivers under my login so that they can train. I might be explaining this wrong, sorry. National RTAP can explain it, but you will be basically the fleet manager, right? And then your drivers can create logins also, and you will be able to see what trainings they've completed and assign trainings, I believe. So it gives you kind of like a manager's access. And then your drivers can be put under your login as drivers, and you're like the manager, and you can see all of that. So they offer that for free, and they also have a lot of other stuff for free that's awesome. So do that. Their e-learning videos will have the to-the-point training videos that cover all of the things that we require. They also have great management training videos too, and other types of trainings. So I recommend using them. There's also another training that some of our drivers use, which is also okay. And I can't remember what it's called, but If you have a different type of training program, just let us know and we can review it and see if it meets the minimum requirements. Okay, pre and post trip inspections. This is a very thorough example of a pre-post trip inspection form. Like I said, if it kind of depends on your program, right, and what your policies are. If this is too much for your drivers, you could do something like we do where we have like more of a walk around inspection and a starting the engine inspection, but the opening the hood and checking belts and things like that is more of a manager inspection. And they do that either weekly, monthly, or quarterly, depending on how often you're running these vehicles. This is an old inspection sheet, so it is actually missing some things. It should include your starting mileage and your ending mileage. If it's an accessible vehicle, it should also have your starting lift cycles and your ending lift cycles. And it should have something on the checklist that shows your driver that they need to run the lift one time before leaving the garage or location where the vehicle is kept. We have a list of what these minimums are. It should be in your guidebook, but I also have templates on the website that are more updated than this one. And just different examples. Agencies have adapted and done this different ways. So if you want examples, we have that. I've also seen agencies now trying to do it digitally, where they like fill out a form, but just make sure you have policies on who's checking these forms and where they're going, and that you have to keep them for at least 3 years before you dispose of them, things like that. Every time your drivers take a vehicle out, they will need to do a pre and post trip inspection. And again, the form needs to include cycling the lift and the lift number on the lift if you have an accessible vehicle. Also, you should have, and this one does not have it, like a little section at the bottom where they can add notes, because they might see something that's not on here, like the registration was expired in the vehicle, or the Title VI poster fell off, or something like that, okay? Disposal. UTA is currently working on updating our policies on disposal. We're working with UDOT to kind of try and have similar disposal policies to them, because they've gone through disposal more than we have. So we're kind of trying to learn by their best practices. And we are required to maintain continuous control of the assets through their useful life and beyond, but not quite as much, okay? We have a lien on all the vehicle titles, and we will hold on to those titles until you dispose of the vehicle. Again, when your vehicle reaches its useful life, you don't have to report in Ride Pilot anymore, but you still have to keep the vehicle. I also have stickers that I just got made that say this vehicle is a federal asset that we will put in the vehicle when we get it. If you want some of those stickers, I can bring them to the LCCs and hand them out, or I can order more, just so that if there's staff turnover over time, you know that those vehicles are federal assets and someone won't go and sell them. If the vehicle is sold, you have to contact us for the title, and then any amount over 5K, again, they no longer allow us to reprogram it. We have to return it to the FTA. Okay, we're gonna watch the human trafficking video. Again, I picked a shorter video. It's not quite as entertaining because it's made by the US DOT, so it's kind of boring. But if you do want to watch the Truckers Against Human Trafficking video, which I like better, but it's longer. Also let me know if you don't like this video. I'll put the other video back in the training, but we'll try this one out this year and see how it goes. Give me a second. I might have to reshare my screen so you can see it.
The U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Transit Administration are committed to detecting and deterring human trafficking on public transit and other modes of transportation. In 2018, Transportation Secretary Elaine L. Chao established an advisory committee to develop recommendations to combat human trafficking. In addition to the DOT's efforts, FTA has established a Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Initiative with the objective of combating human trafficking in transit. This educational video from FTA is intended to raise awareness and point out the signs of potential human trafficking on public transportation systems. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. It is one of the world's fastest-growing crimes, with millions of men, women, and children trafficked every year in countries around the world, including the United States. In fact, according to the anti-human trafficking group Polaris, human trafficking is a $150 billion global industry that robs 25 million people around the world of their freedom. Human trafficking is a crime involving the exploitation of someone for the purposes of compelled labor or a commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Where a person younger than 18 is induced to perform a commercial sex act, it is a crime regardless of whether there is any force, fraud, or coercion. Victims can be anyone from around the world or right next door, women and men, adults and children, citizens and non-citizens alike. Coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Traffickers might use violence, threats, manipulation, or the promise of love and affection to lure victims. Exploitation of children under 18 for commercial sex is human trafficking, regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion was used. Trafficking remains largely hidden. Victims rarely seek help because of language barriers, fear of punishment from their traffickers, and fear of law enforcement. Although human trafficking does not require travel, almost every type of human trafficking intersects with transportation systems at some point. Trafficking victims are moved using all modes of transportation, including transit. U.S. DOT leads Transportation Leaders Against Human Trafficking, a multi-agency federal initiative focused on the prevention of human trafficking through policy, training, and education. The initiative builds awareness among transportation operators and the traveling public to fight the spread of trafficking in the U.S. Transit buses and light rail and subway systems may be a mode of transportation used by traffickers because of the low cost and limited interaction with officials. They allow more anonymity in obtaining fare cards and less attention from frontline transit workers. Although sex traffickers recruit victims wherever opportunities present themselves, bus stops and train stations present especially good locations. Traffickers are particularly interested in the runaway and homeless youth in these venues, which may serve as shelters of last resort. A 2017 Polaris survey of trafficking survivors bears this out, finding that 63% of survey respondents use mass transit, such as public buses, subways, and publicly accessible transportation services, including long-distance buses, taxis, and ride shares. Public transportation also plays a role for victims attempting to escape. A survivors survey found that 26% of respondents used public transportation in at least one of their escape attempts. Buses are the most frequently used method of escape because of the relatively low cost and high levels of safety. These survey results underscore the need for transit agencies to be actively engaged in deterring human trafficking through awareness programs for both employees and passengers. Some transit agencies are taking steps to ensure their employees are trained to identify and report potential trafficking situations. Training often includes raising awareness of clues and suspicious behaviors that may indicate the occurrence of human trafficking. This video is meant to supplement agency-specific training on human trafficking and reflects a renewed federal focus to combat human trafficking under U.S. DOT's Transportation Leaders Against Human Trafficking initiative. The following are definitions of human trafficking and trafficking victims. What follows are some indicators of human trafficking to look for on transit. Suspicious behaviors that can be associated with human trafficking include some of the following. Transit bus drivers may be helpful in spotting victims of human trafficking. Drivers assigned to specific neighborhood routes with consistent interaction with daily riders may be in a good position to spot victims of trafficking. Passengers, operators, and other transit personnel should not attempt to confront a suspected trafficker directly or alert a victim to suspicions. It may be unsafe to attempt to rescue a trafficking victim. You have no way of knowing how the trafficker may react and retaliate against the victim and you. If you believe you have identified a trafficking situation, immediately alert law enforcement by calling 911. If you identify a victim who has escaped a trafficking situation, here are organizations that can help with shelter, medical care, legal assistance, and other critical services. As a public transportation employee, you have the opportunity to help. Stay alert and report suspicious behaviors. Recognizing indicators of human trafficking is the first step in identifying victims and can help save lives.
Okay. Where's my other screen? Okay. We are almost through the slides. We have about 10 to go, so I think we'll finish by noon. We're going to talk about coordination and then resources. I think those are the last topics. Coordination. IRSTA is a conference that is held in Utah every year. They have, you'll hear us talk about it a lot at the local coordinated councils, but they have scholarships that you can apply for your drivers. It used to cover 100% of the conference and hotel. I think they're going to be changing that to like a 50% reimbursement. So if you plan that into your operating budget for the year, you could use 5310 operations to help pay for the rest of that. I'm not so clear on how they're changing the scholarship reimbursements, but definitely keep applying to get scholarships for your drivers. They also do a bus rodeo competition for drivers. They do like the big bus, but they also do like a paratransit bus loading and unloading and securing competition. So it's really great. And the winner gets sent to the national conference competition. So it's really cool. Definitely go. They split up the conference into management training and driver training. So you and your drivers can all go to IRSTA and get training. They have great lecturers every year. This year, the registration has already passed, but it will be in Logan. They change where it is every year, and it's a lot of fun. This year, I will be doing a lecture on grant management, and then the years that we have an application cycle, I also offer a lecture on how to prepare for your grant applications. So come to that training. It's great, hopefully. IRSTA is a statewide organization that provides training, education, and advocacy to transit providers. They don't do 2 conferences a year anymore. They just do 1, to my knowledge, and the bus rodeo. Okay. Also, local coordinating council meetings. These do affect your application score, And I think you miss important announcements and information about the 5310 program if you're not participating in the local coordinating council meetings, because we do send out emails and alerts, but sometimes you don't see those or something. So coming to the council meetings is important. It also allows you to meet with other subrecipients. And then in October, usually we do all the UZAs getting together, and you can learn a lot more about other programs in Utah that offer different services. There are 3 UZAs that meet. Christy calls them by county, but that's not technically the FTA correct term. So I'm going to tell you the FTA correct term. It's Ogden-Layton UZA, Salt Lake UZA, and Provo-Orem UZA. The local coordinated council meetings are held, this might be outdated, but every other month, and then the October one is our big one altogether. I think we do, 5 a year. I think that's right. All subrecipients should attend and participate in the meetings, and attendance will give you more points on your application, and we check attendance. So make sure you fill out the attendance sheet, because when you say, I went to all of the meetings last year on your application, we check the attendance and make sure it matches with what you're saying. Please encourage, if you know other nonprofits that provide transportation or really anyone to come to these meetings. They are open to the public, and we used to have a lot more attendees prior to COVID that were not 5310 applicant agencies, and it kind of died down. And now it seems like it's only agencies that apply for the grant that come to these meetings, but they are open to the public, and any nonprofits, any government agencies, anyone working with transportation or just curious about the programs can come to these meetings. This is old, sorry. I updated this last night, but I missed some things. Specific meeting dates are posted on the website rideuta.com/CMM, and then it's the LCC portal, and I have the links at the end of this presentation. The program management plan I talked about in the beginning, it outlines UTA's policies and procedures for administrating the funds, and it's also coordinated with the transportation plan and developed under the guidance of FTA. The Wasatch mobility plans, the local coordinated councils develop and update. So if you are present during a time when we are updating the plans, it's important to get your feedback and your input on those plans, because we rank the types of projects and what the needs are in your area, in your communities. And then we also work on strategies for meeting those local needs in those plans. So the development of those plans are important, and you can find all those plans on our website. Announcements and emails. We will email out important dates, training opportunities, and other opportunities. Sometimes I'll push announcements on Zoomgrants, and a lot of times Trista will just email out to the whole LCC group if I have any important information or trainings that might be good for you. So being on the local coordinated council email list is probably the best way to keep up to date on anything coming down the pipeline and attending. Some other stuff that I may have mentioned, National RTAP is a great resource. They have tons of templates, not just for driver training, but on anything you can think of. They have a whole learning resource center where you can search for different things. It's awesome. National Grant Management Association, also great. This is not a free thing, but if you're an agency that handles a lot of federal money, this might be good for you. It's a little bit high level, so I attend it, but it's a little high level. It's mostly for federal grants, and you'll see a lot of federal agencies there, like NASA and FHWA and the health department. It's huge. And it's in Washington, D.C. every year. And then I don't have on here, but GPA is the Grant Professional Association, and they have a local Utah chapter. That one I think is more beneficial to subrecipients. They focus a lot on nonprofits and grants that can help nonprofits and how to write grants and budgets and stuff if you're a nonprofit, and it's not just federally focused. So I think that if you are a small agency, that is a great one to join. It's also not free, but you could definitely apply for operations funding to cover registration for your manager or something if you want them to have access to that type of training. I think it's really great. And they do a conference every year. It seems like their conference changes, like they'll do somewhere on the West Coast and then the next year somewhere on the East Coast, and they tend to go back and forth. But they do have local chapter conferences sometimes. Our website and YouTube, these are updated. Our website, the fast way to get there is rideuta.com/CMM, which stands for Coordinated Mobility Management. And then you'll see different options there, the FTA 5310 program, the LCC program. And then if you click FTA 5310, you can also get to our resources page, or you can copy this link to get to our resources page. And the one on the bottom is the local coordinated council page, where they have all of the plans too. I think I have the plans on my page too, and all the maps and everything. And then my YouTube channel for trainings and lunch and learn recordings is here. You can also subscribe to the channel if you want like alerts when I've uploaded a new video. And then Clint also has a separate YouTube channel where he puts like ride pilot training. And I think I don't know why it hyperlinked just part of it, but copy the full thing if you need to find his page, or email him and ask him for a link. This might be out of date. I don't know. It has a lot of letters. But this is my YouTube page with all my trainings. Okay. And this recorded training will also be put on there if you have staff that wasn't able to attend this week and there's something you want them to watch, or they can refer back to it. What I do with these long trainings is I will break it up below in the description with time links or whatever, so you can hop to different sections of the video. And then, yeah, so attend your local coordinating council. Collaboration projects get more money, usually because you get more points for collaborating with other subrecipients on projects. It's important to know what other programs are out there, and you can always include trainings, webinars, conferences, and that type of thing in your operations funding if it will help your managers or your drivers with the 5310 program, as long as it's related to the 5310 program. And then just a reminder, read your grant agreement, read the grant management guide. The grant management guide is basically this training from today with a lot more detail, and it will walk you through a lot more. I updated it. Hopefully there's no typos or mistakes, but I will read through it again and just make sure, because it is long and I tried to update it. All right. Now, finally, are there any questions or things we need to discuss? You can either put your question in the chat or take yourself off of mute. No questions? Okay. If you think of any questions, remember, sorry, what?
You're pretty thorough.
Okay, good. If you think of any questions, remember you can email me or Glenda Clausen. And I hope the training was helpful. I know we went through it quicker. It used to be like a full day, and then it shortened to 4 hours, and I'm trying to do it quickly. So You know, if you feel like some stuff went over your head, again, check the grant management guide or reach out to us. Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for attending. We will also have the in-person training on Thursday. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.